That night changed everything in a way I never expected. It started with a simple request from my stepmom, Victoria, asking me to stay home while Thomas went on his usual fishing trip. It felt like any other weekend with just the two of us, but I had no idea that this night would turn into something far more complicated, something that would test the boundaries of our relationship and leave a lasting impact. The house was unusually quiet that morning. The familiar presence of Thomas was missing, and the silence felt unsettling. I had just finished my homework and was ready to unwind when Victoria called me into the living room. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so I can continue bringing you more fascinating true stories like this one. And don't forget to watch this video till the end and like the video, because this story is going to be incredibly interesting. Please hit the like button to show your support. "Can you help me with something?" she asked in a soft, almost casual tone. I could tell something was off, but I didn't know what. After a brief hesitation, I replied, "Sure, what do you need?" and moved towards her. Victoria usually had a calm and collected demeanor, but today there was something different in the air. I couldn't pinpoint it yet. She smiled, but there was an intensity in her eyes that made my heart race. "Come sit down," she said, patting the cushion next to her. I did as instructed, unsure of what was coming next, but a sense of curiosity was building inside me. She leaned back on the couch, crossing her legs and looking at me with an intensity that caught me off guard. "You've really grown up," she said lightly, but her words carried more weight than usual. "You're not the little boy I knew." I felt a sharp pang in my chest. This was different from our usual friendly relationship. There was something dangerous about the way she said it. "I guess," I mumbled, unsure of how to respond. She leaned in slightly, keeping her eyes fixed on mine. "No, really," she pressed. "You've changed, and I think we both know it." Her words sent a chill down my spine, and the air between us felt charged with tension. "Victoria, what are you trying to say?" I finally asked, the question forcing its way out of me. I needed to understand what was happening, why everything felt so strange. She looked at me for a moment, her eyes searching for the right words, before sighing and standing up to look out the window. "Thomas is gone for the weekend," she said quietly, her gaze distant. "It's just the two of us here." I nodded, confused, yet feeling the knot in my stomach tighten. She turned to face me, her expression unreadable. "You know, I've been thinking," she continued softly. "There are things I've been wanting to talk to you about. Things I've never had the courage to say until now." My throat tightened as I swallowed. "Like what?" I asked. She stepped closer to me, locking her gaze onto mine. "Like us," she said simply. The word hung in the air and my heart began to race. What was she implying? This didn't make sense. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice came out shaky. "What do you mean, us?" Victoria gave me a knowing smile that sent a wave of unease through me. "You've noticed it too, haven't you?" she asked in a soft voice. "The way things have changed between us. We're not just stepmother and stepson anymore." My mind spun as I tried to process what she was saying. I had felt the changes too, the glances, the subtle touches, but I had ignored it, convincing myself it wasn't real. "I don't know what you mean," I lied, my voice barely a whisper. She stepped closer, her presence overwhelming, and suddenly the room felt much smaller. "Yes, you do," she said softly, her fingers brushing against my arm. "You felt it too." I stood up abruptly, stepping away from her, trying to clear my head. "This is crazy, Victoria," I said, my voice trembling. "You're my stepmom. We shouldn't." But she didn't step back. Instead, she followed me, closing the space between us. "Why not?" she whispered, her gaze intense and unyielding. "We're both adults. We don't have to follow anyone else's rules." I shook my head, trying to resist the pull drawing me closer to her. "No, this isn't right," I insisted, even though I could feel myself weakening. "But what if it is?" she countered, her hand gently touching my cheek. The contact sent a shock through me, and for a moment I was frozen, trapped by the web she was weaving around us. I wanted to push her away, to run out of the room and pretend this never happened, but something kept me rooted in place. I hated myself for it. The tension in the house became unbearable. Every time I saw Victoria, I could feel the weight of everything we weren't saying pressing down on me, but I didn't know how to stop it. The days blurred together, and every interaction with her felt like walking on a razor's edge. I tried to keep my distance, avoiding being alone with her as much as possible, but it wasn't easy. She found ways to be near me, whether it was a casual touch on my arm or a lingering look. The tension between us refused to fade. Then came the night everything changed. Thomas was working late, and I was holed up in my room, hoping that if I stayed away from her, things might go back to normal. But deep down, I knew that wasn't going to happen. I heard her moving downstairs, the faint hum of the TV in the background. The seconds ticked by, each one dragging on, making it harder to ignore what was happening. I thought about leaving, calling a friend, but something held me back. Instead, I found myself standing at the top of the stairs, listening to the silence that had settled over the house. It was too quiet, too still, and that's when I made the decision that would change everything. I walked downstairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. Victoria was sitting on the couch, a glass of wine in her hand, her gaze distant as she stared at the TV. She didn't notice me at first, or maybe she pretended not to. I hesitated, unsure of what to do or say, but then she looked up, her eyes locking with mine, and I knew there was no turning back. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked casually, though her voice sent a wave of heat through me. "Yeah," I mumbled, not trusting myself to say anything more. I walked over and sat on the couch, leaving space between us. But the distance didn't help. I could still feel the weight of the tension between us. We sat there in silence for a few moments, the only sound the soft murmur of the TV. I could feel her eyes on me, her gaze lingering in a way that made my skin tingle. I didn't know what to say, how to break the silence without making it worse. Before I could speak, she did. "I've been thinking about us," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. My heart skipped a beat. "We can't—" I started to protest, but she interrupted. "Why not?" she asked, turning to face me fully. "Why are we pretending that nothing's between us when we both know it is?" Her words hit me hard. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, that we couldn't go down this path, but I didn't have the strength to fight anymore. I had felt it too, the strange pull between us growing stronger with time. I had tried to ignore it, but now, sitting here with her, I couldn't deny it. "We can't do this," I said, but even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. I was lying to her, lying to myself. She leaned in closer, her hand resting on the cushion between us. "We're not doing anything wrong," she whispered, her voice intense. "We're not hurting anyone." I shook my head, trying to clear the fog clouding my thoughts. "But it's not right," I protested weakly. She reached out and placed her hand on mine, sending a jolt through my body. "Who says what's right and wrong?" she asked, her voice steady, her gaze never leaving mine. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I was trapped, not by her, but by the intensity of the moment, by the feelings I had tried to ignore for so long. "We don't have to follow anyone else's rules," she murmured, her fingers tracing light patterns on the back of my hand. "We can decide for ourselves what's right." I closed my eyes, trying to block out everything. Her voice, her touch, but it was impossible. The walls I had built around myself were crumbling, and I didn't know how to stop it. Before I could say anything, before I could gather the strength to pull away, she leaned in even closer, her lips brushing against my ear as she whispered, "Tell me you don't feel it, too." Her words sent a shiver through me, and I hated how much my body responded to her, how much I wanted to give in. I opened my mouth to protest, but no words came out. Instead, I turned to face her, our eyes locking. The moment stretched on, the tension thick between us, and then, without thinking, I kissed her. It started soft, tentative, but soon deepened, the heat between us rising as we gave in to the desire that had been building for so long. My hands found their way to her waist, pulling her closer as her fingers tangled in my hair. The world around us seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of us, lost in the intensity of the moment. I knew it was wrong, knew that we were crossing a line we could never come back from, but I couldn't stop. I didn't want to stop. As the kiss deepened, my mind raced with 1,000 conflicting thoughts. I knew this was dangerous, knew that we were playing with fire, but there was a part of me that didn't care, a part of me that had wanted this for longer than I was willing to admit. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were breathing heavily, our faces inches apart. Her eyes were dark, filled with something I couldn't quite name, and I knew that things would never be the same between us. "I've wanted this for so long," she whispered, her breath warm against my skin, "and I know you have too." I didn't respond. I couldn't. The truth was too overwhelming for me to face. Instead, I just nodded, my heart pounding as the weight of what we had just done settled over me. But even then, I knew it wasn't over. The kiss had only been the beginning. There was more. There would always be more. After that night, everything changed between us. I couldn't look at Victoria the same way. Every time our eyes met, I felt a rush of heat, a reminder of what we'd done and the unspoken promise of what might happen again. The air in the house seemed charged with something dangerous, something we both understood but didn't dare acknowledge openly. Days passed in a tense, awkward silence. I kept my distance as best I could, but it was impossible to avoid her completely. Every brush of her hand, every passing glance felt like a spark, threatening to ignite the tension that simmered just beneath the surface. I knew what was happening wasn't right, but there was a pull between us that I couldn't ignore, no matter how hard I tried. One afternoon, while Thomas was out again, the silence in the house felt unbearable. I was pacing the living room, trying to distract myself with the TV, but my thoughts kept drifting back to her. The memory of that kiss, the way her lips had felt against mine, the way my heart had raced, it was all too much. I hated myself for thinking about it, but I couldn't stop. Just when I thought I might lose my mind, I heard her footsteps behind me. I turned to see Victoria standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The tension between us was thick, heavy with everything left unsaid. "We need to talk," she said finally, her voice low, almost hesitant. I nodded, knowing this conversation was inevitable, even if I wasn't ready for it. "Yeah," I agreed, my throat tight. "We do." She walked over to the couch, sitting down with a sigh. I followed, sitting across from her, keeping a careful distance. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I couldn't quite meet her eyes. I didn't know how to start, didn't know what to say that would make any of this better. "I know things have been different," she began, her hands clasped in her lap. "And I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. That's the last thing I want." I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. "I don't know what to feel," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I mean, this isn't normal, right? We're not supposed to feel this way." Victoria looked down at her hands, her expression troubled. "I know," she said softly, "but it's not something we can just ignore either, can we?" I didn't have an answer for her. The truth was, I didn't know what we were supposed to do. Everything felt wrong, but at the same time, there was a part of me that didn't want it to stop. I couldn't explain it, couldn't rationalize it, but the feelings were there, undeniable and real. She shifted on the couch, leaning forward slightly. "I think about that night all the time," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't stop thinking about it." My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to tell her that I thought about it too, that it haunted my every waking moment, but I couldn't bring myself to say the words. Instead, I just nodded, my heart racing. There was a long silence between us, filled with the weight of everything we weren't saying. I could feel the tension building again, that same dangerous pull that had led us down this path in the first place. And then, before I could stop myself, I said, "I think about it too." The words were out of my mouth before I could take them back, and once they were spoken, there was no undoing them. Victoria's eyes flicked up to meet mine, and in that moment, I knew there was no going back. We had crossed a line, and now we were standing on the edge of something even more dangerous. She didn't say anything at first, but the look in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. There was a heat there, a need that mirrored my own, and it terrified me. But at the same time, it excited me in a way I couldn't deny. "We can't keep doing this," I said, my voice shaky, though even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it. Victoria's gaze never left mine. "I know," she whispered, "but we're already here, aren't we?" The room felt too small, the air too thick. I wanted to run, to put as much distance between us as possible, but I couldn't move. I was trapped, not by her, but by my own desires. The pull between us was too strong, too overwhelming to resist. Before I knew what was happening, she leaned in, her face inches from mine. I could feel her breath on my skin, warm and soft, and my heart pounded in my chest. For a split second, I thought I might be able to stop it, to pull away and end this before it went any further. But then her lips were on mine, and all rational thought disappeared. The kiss was different this time. It wasn't hesitant or unsure. It was full of the tension we had been holding back, the desire that had been building for so long. I kissed her back without thinking, my hands resting on the couch, gripping the fabric to keep myself grounded. It wasn't about love or affection, it was about need, a raw, burning need that neither of us could control. My heart was racing, my mind a blur of thoughts I couldn't grasp. All I knew was that in this moment there was no turning back. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were breathless, our foreheads resting against each other. The weight of what we had just done hung heavy in the air, but neither of us moved to break the moment. "We have to stop," I said again, though my voice was weak, lacking conviction. Victoria nodded, her breath warm against my skin. "I know," she whispered, "but it's so hard, isn't it?" I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. We were trapped in this web we had woven, and no matter how much we told ourselves, we needed to stop. The pull between us kept dragging us back together, and that's when it happened. She leaned into me again, and we couldn't resist it. It all happened, and as quickly as it had begun, it was over. I think because it was a bit too exciting for me, but she didn't seem to care. After we were done, she smiled at me, letting me know she liked it a lot. The next few days passed in a blur. We tried to act normal, tried to pretend that nothing had happened, but the tension between us was undeniable. Every time I saw her, I felt that same rush of heat, that same dangerous pull. It was like we were circling each other, waiting for the moment when we would finally give in again, and I knew it was only a matter of time. One evening, when Thomas was out late for work, I found myself in the kitchen trying to distract myself by making dinner. But the silence in the house was deafening, and I couldn't focus. Every sound seemed to echo, reminding me of the weight of what we were doing. I didn't hear her come in at first, but when I turned around, there she was, leaning against the doorframe, watching me with that same unreadable expression. "Need any help?" she asked, her voice casual, but there was something beneath it, something that made my pulse quicken. "No, I'm good," I said, though my hands were shaking. She walked over to me, standing too close, her presence overwhelming. "Are you sure?" I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. "Victoria, we can't—" I started, but she cut me off. "We don't have to do anything," she said softly, her eyes locked on mine. "But I think we both know where this is going." The words hung between us, heavy and final. I wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong, but I couldn't, because deep down, I knew she was right. We stood there in silence, the space between us shrinking with every passing second. And then, before I knew it, She was kissing me again. It was quick, almost fleeting, but it reignited everything we had been trying to hold back. My heart pounded in my chest, and I knew that this was only the beginning. The weeks that followed were a blur of stolen moments and fleeting glances. It felt like living in two different realities, one where everything seemed normal, and another where Victoria and I were always on the brink of something we couldn't control. The weight of our secret was heavy, but we couldn't stay away from each other. No matter how much I tried to tell myself it had to stop, every time Thomas left or stayed out late, the tension between us grew. Whenever I found myself in the same room as her, we both knew exactly what was about to happen. It was terrifying how easily we had fallen into this pattern. Every touch, every look felt like we were crossing an invisible line, but neither of us pulled away. Instead, we were drawn closer together, as if something larger than both of us was pulling us down this dangerous path. One Saturday afternoon, the atmosphere in the house felt particularly charged. Thomas was out at a company event and wouldn't be back until late. I woke up that morning with an uncomfortable sense of anticipation, as if I knew something was about to happen, something we couldn't undo. Victoria was in the kitchen when I walked in, washing dishes with her back turned. She didn't flinch when I entered, as if she knew I was there. I stood by the door, unsure of what to say or do, feeling the weight of the tension between us. When she turned around, our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The silence was thick, heavy with everything we weren't saying. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice gentle. But there was something in her eyes that seemed to search me for the answer. I wasn't okay. I hadn't been for a while, but how could I admit that? How could I explain this storm inside me, the constant tug of war between right and wrong? "I don't know," I whispered, my voice barely audible. Victoria took a step closer to me. "I've been thinking," she began, her words slow and deliberate. "Maybe we should talk about what's been happening." I tensed, unsure I wanted to have this conversation. What could we say that hadn't already been said by our actions? But she wasn't backing down, and I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. "What's there to talk about?" I asked, my heart racing. Victoria sighed and rubbed her forehead with the back of her hand. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe we need to figure out where this is going. We can't keep living like this, pretending it isn't happening." She was right, but I didn't want to hear it. "Where do you think it's going?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. Victoria flinched slightly, but kept her gaze on me. "I don't know," she said softly, "but I do know we can't keep ignoring it." I ran a hand through my hair, frustration welling up. "What do you want from me?" I snapped. Not out of anger at her, but because I didn't have the answers either. "Do you want me to say this is okay? That I'm fine with it? Because I'm not. I'm not okay with any of this." Her expression softened and she stepped closer. "I don't want you to be fine with it," she said quietly. "I just want you to be honest with yourself, with me." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, because I knew exactly what she meant. I'd been lying to myself for so long, convincing myself this was just a phase, that it would end if we ignored it. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I couldn't stop wanting her. And the more I tried to fight it, the stronger it became. "I don't know how to do that," I admitted, my voice cracking. "I don't know how to be honest about this." Victoria reached out, gently resting her hand on my arm. The touch sent a shiver down my spine, and I hated how much I needed it. "It's okay," she whispered, her eyes filled with understanding. "We'll figure it out together." Her sincerity broke something inside me, and before I knew it, I pulled her close, kissing her, as if it was the only thing that could keep me grounded. This time, the kiss wasn't rushed or desperate. It was slow and deliberate, as if we both were trying to hold on to something slipping away. When we finally broke apart, our foreheads resting together, we stood in silence, our breaths mingling. I could feel her heartbeat against mine, fast and erratic, matching my own. "What are we doing?" I whispered, almost to myself. "I don't know," she whispered back. but I can't stop. Neither could I. As the days passed, we grew closer, and the moments we spent together became more intense, more frequent. It felt like the only time I was truly myself was when I was with her. I knew it couldn't last. I knew that something had to give eventually, but I wasn't ready to face that yet. Then one evening, everything came crashing down. I was sitting in the living room, the TV on but muted, my thoughts a million miles away. Victoria was upstairs, and Thomas was supposed to be out late again, but I wasn't paying attention to the time. I was lost in my thoughts, thinking about everything we had done, everything we couldn't undo. The sound of the front door opening snapped me out of my reverie, and for a moment I froze, panic rising in my chest. I hadn't expected Thomas to come home so soon. I scrambled to stand up, but before I could react, he was already walking into the living room, his eyes scanning the space before landing on me. "Hey," he said casually, but there was something in his tone that I couldn't quite place. "What are you doing?" "Just watching TV," I said, my voice tight with fear, trying to hide the panic I felt. My heart was racing, guilt gnawing at me like a live wire. He didn't seem to notice, or maybe he was choosing not to. He sat down on the couch, flipping through channels as if everything was normal. I tried to calm myself, to convince myself everything was fine, but the weight of what we were hiding was suffocating. Victoria came down the stairs a few minutes later, her face carefully neutral. She greeted Thomas like nothing was wrong, as though everything was perfectly normal. But I could see the tension in her eyes, the way her hands fidgeted nervously at her sides. Dinner that night was excruciating. The conversation felt stilted, and every time Thomas spoke, I could feel the walls closing in. I couldn't look at Victoria, couldn't meet her gaze. Every glance we exchanged made my chest tighten with fear. I thought we might get through the evening without incident, but just as we were clearing the table, Thomas turned to me with an unreadable expression. "You've been spending a lot of time with Victoria lately," he said, his voice calm but probing. My heart stopped. I glanced at Victoria, who had gone pale, her eyes wide with fear. I guess," I stammered, trying to keep my voice steady. Thomas's gaze lingered on me, his eyes searching mine, and I could feel the air in the room shift. "Anything you want to tell me?" he asked, his tone still casual, but there was something in it that made my blood run cold. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. My mind raced, trying to find something to say, something that would make this go away, but I couldn't lie. I couldn't pretend anymore. Victoria's hand brushed mine under the table, a silent